Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today has experience overseeing over $140 million in real estate assets. She is a former brand manager at the Hershey Company, where she managed and marketed yummy brands like Hershey Kisses. Her expertise lies in marketing, strategic growth planning, innovation, and operations. Puja Talati is the head of marketing strategy at Enzo Multifamily. Puja, welcome to Purchase to Profits.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you because you're going to give us a really unique spin on the marketing and branding side of multifamily real estate.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool.
So to kick things off, do you want to tell us about your goals in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons why I joined Enzo Multifamily and actually completely switched industries and careers, one was I liked the challenge of it. So trying something different, I always want to try something new and constantly feel challenged. But from a personal perspective, my husband and I always wanted to get into real estate. But we both had full-time jobs and just had a baby. So couldn't think of adding, another full-time job on top of that. So I was in a position where I was able to leave the corporate world and join real estate. And one of the things is there's the financial aspect of it, getting the passive income, as well as, I'm more on the active side of things, but then also really the flexibility. So, my overarching goal is really to be able to spend more time with family and have that passive income rolling in, which, talking to a lot of other people in the real estate industry, you start to see a very similar trend.
Oh, absolutely. Time is your most valuable asset, right?
Absolutely.
So in terms of, getting more time and being involved with Enzo Multifamily, do you want to acquire real estate on your own, or are you investing in the deals that Enzo's doing? Like, how does your investing look?
Yeah, so I invest on a passive side, but also within Enzo Multifamily, we are active in acquiring assets, and then I also invest, obviously, in the assets that we acquire.
Yeah.
I from a personal passive perspective, I've invested in multifamily, I've done single family, so I'm always open to seeing what other types of things we can do from a real estate perspective, but obviously multifamily is my bread and butter.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good thing to talk about, because we're talking to you from somebody who's invested on the passive side.
Yep.
Lots of times we get people on the general partner side. What are some of the things you looked at in your first couple deals that you invested in as that limited partner?
Yep. So from the passive side, one of the things, and I always tell people this, even on the active side, I think it's the same, right? But you want to, first of all, go with a company that you trust, right? I think that's very important. You want to know, what are their goals? What are their values? How do they evaluate a deal? And then more importantly for me, I wanted to know that I was investing in an area that was stable. And that's really important, right? I've seen people and heard people talk about, well, I get these double-digit returns, but they're also, in the middle of nowhere. So, people are always concerned when the market crashes, what are the risks going to look like? And so being in that stable area, you're helping to mitigate that risk. So for me, it's finding an area where, population is going to go to. So getting that population growth, getting, the economic growth, as well as that rent growth. And so seeing that, it's going to be a stable market. So that, every investment has its risk, but at least this is mitigated. So those are some of the things that I'll look for, and obviously look for the returns, and just make sure that, I'm also being diversified within real estate and not just putting everything into one location. Yeah,
for sure. And do you have a goal for yourself in terms of, do you want to one day, remove yourself from the workforce and just invest, or what does your future look like?
Yeah, so my future, what I really want to do is, and I think this is a lot of, I guess speak for all three of my partners as well, is we would love to be able to fully outright own a multifamily asset between the four of us as partners. So it is active, but then, you're starting to get that passive income. And ultimately, my husband and I, when we were thinking about doing this and having me leave the corporate world and start my venture in real estate, it's like you said, it's about that time. So if I can do that more and it becomes more of a passive aspect, then we could do what we truly want to do. And I was talking to an investor a couple days ago, and I think she said it best, is really being good citizens. So I would love to then put a lot of my energy and time into, starting a nonprofit or just being able to give back.
Yeah.
That's something that's really important to me and my husband. He actually just came back from a mission trip in Belize and was telling me how wonderful it was. And so this is the second one he's been on, and we hope to take our 2 little girls when they're a little bit older and do stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's the really cool stuff you got to do with real estate.
Yeah. Which, to be honest, when you're working like the 9-to-5 corporate world, you just don't have that flexibility. And you really can't take, you're working for someone else at the end of the day. And here I just feel like I'm able to, create my own path. And if something isn't working, we can shift and pivot and see how we can make it work. And I've definitely seen that in real estate, and heard some really great stories just talking with other people.
Yeah. And, with you today as our guest, we have a really unique perspective, because most of the time investors talk about, how do I acquire more deals? How can I get more leads? But the marketing aspect is also really important. Do you want to share with us a little bit about how marketing really affects a real estate company and a project?
Sure. So maybe I'll start first with how it's impacted my company, Enzo Multifamily. So when I was thinking about leaving brand management and starting with Enzo, and I was talking to my brother Seth Talati and Vina Jetty. It started the company, and he's like, why don't you come over here? We could really use your help from a marketing perspective. And I thought, well, I have no idea about the real estate industry, really. I only know what you told me. But then I started to think about, my past experience has been in brand management, but also I was in management consulting before that. So I was able to marry both of those and use that to really help the company. So when I came on board, I realized, we didn't really have a lot of marketing in place. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a social media platform. So I put all of those in place. And so if I were to tell operators, when you're working with investors, and maybe this is simple nowadays, but you really do need to have a website. I mean, you need to have that credibility. To me, that's just table stakes. People who are investing with you, they want to know about you. They want to see your face. They want to see what you've done. And they just want to see what properties you have, maybe where the location is. So that, I think, is just table stakes. You have to have that. So one of the first things was putting together the website. It's an evolving process. It's never finalized. And we always are getting these great ideas. And so we're starting to add all these extra layers on. One of my goals is to have like an educational piece added to it. So hopefully by the end of this year, our goal is to have an educational series for our investors. I also put together the social media platform. So adding Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, again, table stakes. People, especially a lot of the investors, we're always on our phones. We're always quickly looking up, who are we investing with? Do they even have a presence? So adding all of that. And I will say one thing is, coming from a big corporation, I had an agency who did all of this for me. And I know a lot of us operators, we're pretty lean. So that was definitely a learning curve, and I'm still learning along the way, but flexing different muscles. And basically I'm a one-man shop, and I have to do that part myself. So it is very time consuming, but there is definitely an importance in raising awareness, and getting people to follow you and see what you're about, and sharing, the same insights with other people. And simple things like business cards and whatnot. So one of the biggest things I did was doing a branding for the company. And this is something that I learned from my brand management days that I applied to our company. And it was actually very well received. And I think the partners found it very refreshing, but really taking a step back and seeing, okay, who is our investor base? And so taking that step back and saying, who are we really targeting? Because you can say, okay, we're going to start targeting, we're just going to start talking to investors. Well, it's really nice if you know who your investor is and really targeting that. So for us, it's anywhere for people between the ages of 35 to 60. Okay, now we have a specific age group that we're talking to. And then finding that insight. So what is that pain point that our investors are looking at? And for us, it's people who want to invest in real estate, or they've heard about the idea, but they don't know how to go about doing that. So that's the pain point. So now we can address that pain point when we're talking to these investors and changing their current mindset, which is, I've always invested in stocks. That's what I've been told to do. And, I'm diversified within the stock, so I think I'm set. And changing that current mindset to this desired mindset of I can still invest in the stock market, but enjoy these passive returns and the tax benefits by investing in real estate. So part of that is educating our investors and also changing their desired mindset that they can indeed do both. And once we kind of really put that together, it took a couple of days to really refine and hone who our investor is. But I think that really helped us set our goal, and then setting our goal for last year. So for example, okay, now that we know this, what is our marketing goal? And last year was a really raising our investor base. And so our target, okay, we increase our database from, by 10%. And we were able to surpass that and actually double it. So that was really exciting. But I think just really narrowing down who your target was from an internal perspective really helped us figure out who we were and who we were targeting.
Yeah. And lots of our viewers, they have some experience in real estate, and maybe they're thinking about going after, and doing a syndication with some larger deals.
Mm-hmm.
At what point should they start thinking about taking that step back and looking at their brand and who they're targeting? Should that be before they even start looking at a deal? What would you suggest?
I think you can do it simultaneously. So that's one thing I realized in the very beginning. We're four partners, right? And we were all kind of looking at deals together and trying to do the acquisition process together. But we realized there's four of us and there's a lot to do. So the best is to divide and conquer. And I would say go with what your strength is. So my brother Sepin, he's really good with the numbers. So he is always working on the underwriting and talking to private equity groups and lenders and doing the acquisitions alongside with Vina, and her strength is really talking to the brokers and the acquisition process and the investor relations. And then our third partner, Neil, he does operations and investor relations. And then I do more of the, internal operations, if you will, in the marketing. So we realized if we can really divide and conquer, you'll be good. And you don't have to do those one after the other. You can kind of do a lot of this simultaneously. I would say the brand side of things, it could take time. It could take a month. It's a little bit of a longer process, but that doesn't mean you should stop the rest of the operations.
Yeah.
And you can kind of keep it going.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something that's really important, because you have to know who your target market is investor wise, because then you can take, you were talking about your education component, then you can tailor that education component to exactly who you want to reach, because there's no point in having education that's, aimed at somebody who's, let's say 25 when you're looking at 35 to 60. So I think that's a really important message for somebody.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move on to a keystone deal, and you're going to walk us through on a marketing and rebranding side. Mm-hmm. So is there one deal that stands out that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we acquired a 160 unit asset last year. And this was really exciting for me because I joined the company in 2017. So this is the first one that I was able to see really from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And you're going to see different types of branding on different projects, right? Some people, you'll find that operators initially, they actually had a pretty good marketing plan in place. Other operators, they, advertise through Craigslist. So you'll see the full gamut. For this one, we were able to pretty much start from scratch, which was really great. And one thing that I'll tell you is I think from a marketing standpoint, repositioning the asset is definitely a very difficult thing to do. And it's easier said than done. And the reason I say this is when I think about, the Hershey company and, I worked on Hershey's Kisses. Well, that is a very, very old brand. The target market really hasn't changed very much. And as the years go, you change a little bit with the trends. You've had these tried and true marketing methods for decades. When it comes to owners and operators, each property, if you think about it, is your own brand. And you don't have decades to really hone that marketing plan, right? You need to go in there and kind of do that from day one, which I think is a very hard thing to do. So one of the things that I would definitely tell people, and what we looked at when we were looking at this particular asset, is don't cast a very wide net. So if you want to advertise, really think about who you're going to advertise to. And it goes back to really figuring out audiences. So when you're repositioning the asset, what I would think about is who's that target. And a good example, I'll give you an example of a good way to target and not to target. So if you say you're going to just target millennials, Well, that's not detailed enough. So for one of our assets, we would say it was really all about location, right? You're thinking about a B-class property, so it's going to be a value-add property in an A-class area. So by repositioning it, we want to say that we're going to target millennials who seek an active lifestyle and want that live, work, play environment. So now you're very honed in on who that target is going to be. And then the next step is figuring out, where do you want to target these people? So it's that mode or medium of advertising. And what I've learned just from experience is it's better to do what's called precision marketing. And what that basically means is not casting that wide net, but really honing in and targeting where you think that this user is going to be. Yes, it is a lot more expensive, but I think you get a lot more bang for your buck. And look, we don't have millions of dollars to spend on your advertising budget, so we have to be very careful with what we're going to spend and try to save every dollar. So for example, in this case, we obviously apartments.com I think is a great place to go. But then if you think about advertising, think about where these people are going to be. So you're talking about geo-targeting and demographic targeting. So if I'm targeting this active millennial, what I would do is look for places online and place advertisements. Maybe if they're lifestyle seekers, you want to post it on like athletic type websites, obviously in the demographic of where this apartment complex is going to be. And then you can also look at making sure the advertisement follows you around. And this is something that we work with our property management company on. So the first thing we do for that particular property is putting a plan together. And I call this kind of like the funnel, right? So if for example, it's January, so February, you need about 10 people to take up a lease. So how do you go about doing that? And it's putting this plan in place and saying, okay, we're going to target 100 people. So 100 people should see our advertisement. And now breaking that down a little bit further and saying, okay, we want 50% of those people to see our advertisement to click on our property website. And then from those 50 people, you're going to say, okay, I want 20 of those people to walk through my door. So they walk your property. And then we say, okay, out of those 20 people, we need to convert 50%. So we need 10 of those to sign leases. And that's really like the plan that we have, like this funnel system, because it's really not helpful if you're casting that wide net and you have 50 people walking through the door, but only 3 people qualify. It's wasting our property management's time. So by doing that, then what we do is we look at our plan and, we'll tweak it because again, we haven't tried we know that the method works, but we need to maybe tweak our advertising plan to make sure we're really reaching those people. And so we'll see, are we meeting these numbers or projections that we have by month to month? And if not, what do we need to tweak? Are we really seeing that conversion? If we're not, where do we need to go? And I think, when sometimes people think about when I say I do marketing, they think, oh, you talk about colors. No, it's more than that. It's really about the numbers, and the numbers and the data is really what makes this powerful. And you have to know how to use those numbers and analyze that data to really make sure you have an effective plan.
So we've talked about the method of targeting your audience. How does rebranding coming up with a new name? I know some operators keep the old one, some operators go in with a new one. How does that factor into everything?
Yeah, so that's great. So on the last project that we had, initially we thought about changing or rebranding the asset, but then after talking to the property management company that was there before, and also talking to our property management company that we were going to have, they said, we've been talking to the tenants and we've kind of been looking around in the area, and you actually have a really strong name behind this asset. So you look at the feedback from the community, you look to see what people are saying about you, from reviews. If the reviews are pretty positive, there's really not a whole lot of need to change the asset's name. So in this case, we ended up keeping the asset's name, but then we gave it a more modern look and feel. It was really old and very dated, and so that was just a really easy fix. And to me, that's kind of a marketer's dream because you don't really have to touch a lot of it. We just touched the colors, made it a little bit more modern, and that really saved a lot of money on the marketing budget, and that we can then deploy elsewhere. So I think, look and see what people are saying. If it's not broken, I wouldn't, I would just leave it the way it is. I know, from a brand management perspective, a lot of times brands try to do something and change the colors, and then you have the customer saying, why did you change that? It was really great before. And so that's what I mean by that. If there's a lot of traction behind it, I would just say keep it. It makes it a lot easier to manage and operate your business.
Yeah. And how important would you say that photos are when you're advertising the property?
Oh, photos are absolutely the most important thing. I mean, I think we as consumers know that, right? If you're looking at apartments, and I know just from personal experience, having high quality photos is important. If you don't have that, I highly recommend getting a professional photographer to take pictures. It is night and day with how people will, look at your property online. When we're talking about advertising to people right now, we know that everybody, the first place they go is really online. They're not looking in the newspapers anymore and things like that, right? So that's the very first impression of your property. It has to be good. Yeah. And then, making sure that that your property upkeep is also there, because that's the second point of contact with your property is now when people are walking it, they want to see, the beautiful gardens or the landscaping that you showed in the picture. So making sure that your property is maintained is also really important.
So in terms of staging, this kind of goes hand in hand with the photos. One of the things I look for when I'm looking for potential deals is, really bad photos, dated interiors and horrible staging, because those are easy things to fix. And so what's your strategy in terms of getting, your showing suite, your suite ready for people to walk through? Do you work with a professional stager? What do you do?
So we have, depending on, the property and making sure that the numbers work, and some properties will have models and others we won't. And so for the property that we acquired last summer that I was really excited about working with, I mean, it was just very well maintained. And so they actually honestly had really good pictures. So we didn't need to take that many new pictures. But yeah, we do have it completely staged. You want to make it so that when someone walks into that room, they feel at home and they think, I could live here. I mean, that same goes with single family homes and you're getting ready to sell it. It's always good to stage the property. One thing that we are looking to do is also doing mini models. So if we know that, we have a unit that's vacant, it might not be dedicated to being a model unit, but we can have it kind of makeshift and have it ready to look for someone to come through, but then it's not really that unit isn't always going to be a model unit. And so those are some ways that you can also play with it so it's not eating, as an expense or a line item on your pro forma.
Yeah. And are these discussions you're having with the stager in terms of lining up how the unit looks with your target market? Like, does that factor into it?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to line it up with who you're targeting. You look for, okay, what is this person looking for? And depending on who that is, you kind of make it so for this particular asset, it's very modern. The colors or the color scheme is more in line with, it's in line with our branding, but it's also in line with what millennials are thinking about using. And obviously with that, they love the gadgets. So in this particular property, it's having like your Nest thermostats and your electronic key doors, and all those little details will matter to who you're looking at. Yeah. So yes, I think that's absolutely important. You have to think about the customer experience from beginning to end.
Yeah. And is there anything else, like, is there one other piece of advice that you'd give an operator who's maybe starting out or has some experience but has never really taken a hard look at the marketing and branding side?
Yeah, I would say, definitely look at, if you were to start from the very beginning, I would say first think about you as a company and what you're looking to do and what your goals are, because a lot of marketing ties in with your strategy. And so make yearly goals, and then I would say do a mid checkpoint and see, are you meeting that? And based off of that, you can help set your marketing strategy, if you will. And so by having that in place, then you're ready to talk externally. So I think it's really important internally for you to understand who you are, who you're targeting, and what your goal as a company is. And that will change over time, but it helps you to really focus and make sure you're not all over the place. And the reason I say that is the property that we acquired in August, when we finally acquired that, we just saw this big snowball effect. And after that, it was a new market for us. So that was really important. And once we were able to break through that market, we started to get a lot more off-market deals. We started to just build a lot of relationships, and we had to be ready for that. So making sure that once you figure out your, short-term plan, make sure you have a long-term plan in place. And we did. We had talked about that in the beginning of the year, and, things just start to snowball very, very quickly. And so one thing, I'm also a prior consultant. So it was making sure that we had the right operations in place to handle, the scalability of the company. So for us, it was we just purchased 2 operational platforms to really help with our customer experience, because that's really important. You always want to make sure your customer is really happy. So don't just think from the short term, make sure you have a short term and a long term plan.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good message, especially the scalability side, because I've never met an investor who only wants to buy one property, because it's always going to be more properties down the road.
Exactly. And it's funny because we now have repeat customers, right? So then there's that brand loyalty, if you will, right? And so people were just asking us, well, do you have any way that we can really track all of our investments? So one of the goals that we have for this year, we just purchased a platform that it's similar to your Vanguards and your Fidelities, where you can see where you've invested, and you're able to see your returns over the years. It really just provides this nice, the nice little metrics of where your money is going. And it also helps from a disbursement standpoint as well. So we're really excited to roll that out really soon. So I think that the investors will be really excited to see that.
I'm sure they will be. So Puja, where can people get a hold of you and learn more about you and your company?
Yep. So if you want to email me personally, my email address is puja@enzoventures.com. So that's puja@enzoventures.com. You can also find us at www.enzomultifamily.com. You can see all of our bios there, and then you can shoot us a note and also sign up to get more of our communications.
That's great. Well, Puja, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time today to share your marketing and branding insights with us.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to share it as well.
Yeah, that's great. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.